Subscribe to Keep It Terrifying for creepy tales, horror, and nightmares you won't forget. Don't miss out. Hit that subscribe button and keep it terrifying.
Part 1, Ashes and Echoes. Busty woke up choking on cigarette smoke again. A half-smoked stick clung to his lips, its ash long enough to curl and drop to the stained blanket covering his legs. The couch beneath him groaned as he shifted, the fabric stiff with grime and old sweat. A full ashtray spilled onto the coffee table, next to an empty bottle of cheap rum and a crusted plate that once held microwave noodles. A fly buzzed lazily above it. His mouth was dry. His stomach twisted. The headache felt like nails clawing behind his eyes. Outside the cracked window, the world looked the same as always, gray, heavy, dead. Lorne Lane hadn't seen joy in years. Neither had Busty. He used to be different, a kind boy, curious, gentle. The kind that brought lost dogs home and got scolded for it. But kindness didn't count for much in his family. His parents never saw it. Never said, "Well done," or, "I'm proud of you." His mother called him useless. His father didn't even bother looking up from the TV. It got worse as he grew. Mistake after mistake. A fight here. A broken promise there. A bottle too many. Then cigarettes. Then more drinks. Always saying, "I'll do better tomorrow." But tomorrow never came. They kicked him out at 21. Told him not to come back. He didn't. Now 38, Busty lived alone in the one house no one wanted, a forgotten place at the edge of town where weeds grew taller than children and the fence had collapsed years ago. The wallpaper peeled in strips. The sink coughed brown water. But it was cheap, and nobody bothered him. He thought that was a blessing. He was wrong. That morning, something was different. There was a sound. Soft. Wet. Repeating. Drip, drip, drip. He groaned, rubbing his temples and stumbling into the kitchen. The tap was off, but the sound echoed from somewhere deeper, like it came from inside the walls. "Great," he muttered, lighting another cigarette. More leaks. He followed the noise. Past the kitchen. Down the narrow hall lined with pictures he hadn't touched in years, crooked frames filled with blurry snapshots of a past he didn't want to remember. There he was at 12, grinning with a chocolate bar. His father had smacked it out of his hand right after. Said he was too fat. At the end of the hall, the sound stopped. Silence. He turned around. A door he didn't recognize was open, just a crack. It led down into the basement. He didn't remember having a basement. The door hadn't been there yesterday. He was sure of it. The handle was rusted, the frame old, but the edges of the doorway were too clean, as if freshly carved. He shouldn't go down there. But something pulled at him. Not a voice, not a whisper, just a tug beneath his ribs. Like something important had been left behind. "Maybe there's an old heater down there," he mumbled. "Leaking or something." He grabbed a flashlight. Opened the door fully. Cold air spilled out. The steps were steep, too steep. The walls close. He had to duck to keep from hitting his head. His breath fogged the beam of the flashlight. And then, halfway down the steps, the door slammed shut behind him. Shit. He spun, dropped the flashlight, scrambled to grab it again. The bulb flickered. Something had moved. A shadow, or maybe just his own. It was hard to tell, the basement was deeper than it should be. Bigger. Wrong. He reached the bottom. And found himself standing in a room lined with mirrors. Dozens of them. All different shapes and sizes. Some cracked, some fogged, all warped. And in every reflection, he looked different. In one, he was smiling. Young. Clean. In another, old and gray, bleeding from the eyes. In another still, he wasn't there at all. Then all the reflections moved, without him. They raised their hands, pointed at him, and whispered, in unison, "You left me here." Part 2, The Body Remembers. Busty jerked back from the mirrors, stumbling against the cold concrete wall behind him. His knees buckled as a sharp pain shot up his right leg, deep in the bone, like it had cracked from the inside. He clenched his teeth, riding out the wave of pain as his back screamed in protest. His body always hurt now. His joints felt like rusted metal grinding together. His muscles ached like they had carried too much for too long, too many nights on a sagging couch, too many years hunched in regret. Sometimes he wondered if something inside him was rotting. If his insides were breaking down, piece by piece. No doctor visits. No money. Just bottles. Bottles numbed the pain. Sometimes. Today, they didn't. The whispers from the mirrors grew louder. "You left me here. You forgot me. You broke the promise." The air grew colder. The mirrors fogged with frost, and his breath came out in sharp clouds. He turned back to the steps. Gone. Just smooth wall. "What the hell," he muttered, backing away, limping slightly as the ache in his spine flared again. Then one of the mirrors shattered. Not like glass. Like skin. Wet, tearing sound. A blackened hand reached out from the shards, fingers too long, curling like burnt twigs. Busty screamed and threw the flashlight. It clattered across the floor, spinning. More mirrors cracked. One by one, shapes slithered behind the glass, shapes that moved like they didn't have bones. He turned and ran, blindly, limping through the cold. Somehow, he found himself back in the hallway upstairs. The door to the basement was gone. Just smooth, moldy wall. He collapsed on the floor, chest heaving, knees howling in pain. His hands were shaking. Sweat soaked his dirty shirt. "What the hell was that?" he whispered. No answer. Just silence. Then, a knock. Not on the door. Not on the walls. From inside the house. 3 knocks. Slow. Deliberate. Beneath the floor. That night, Busty couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt the ache in his bones like something pushing out from inside. His fingers cramped. His shoulders throbbed. His back felt bruised, like he'd been beaten. He lit a cigarette with shaking hands and stared at the living room wall, where the door had been. There was a crack there now. A hairline fracture. Just wide enough for a black fingernail to press through. He poured himself a drink. His hands didn't stop shaking. He wanted to believe it was a dream. Withdrawal. Maybe a fever. But his body said otherwise. Something had touched him in that basement. Something had woken up. And now it wanted more. Part 3, What Follows. The morning light didn't bring comfort. It never really did on Lorne Lane. The sun filtered through yellowed curtains like weak tea, dull, sickly, and cold. Busty sat at the edge of his couch, hands wrapped around a mug of instant coffee he barely remembered making. His body throbbed like it had been dragged through broken glass. Neck stiff. Spine popping. Ankles swollen. He looked down at his legs and saw bruises forming. Deep purple and yellow, blooming like dead flowers along his calves. He hadn't hit anything. At least, he didn't think he had. The pain was worse now, not just soreness, pressure. As if something inside him was stretching. Testing. Trying to make room. He took a sip of coffee. It tasted like rust. There was a knock at the door. He flinched. It was strange, he hadn't heard a knock in years. No visitors. No neighbors. Even the mailman skipped his box now. He limped to the door, every step a new stab of pain through his knees and hips. He looked through the peephole. Nothing. Just the street. Empty. Silent. Then he looked down. A box. Small. Wrapped in stained brown paper. No name, no return address. He opened the door slowly. The air outside was still. The package was heavier than it looked. Inside, there was only one thing. A mirror. Old. Oval-shaped. Its surface cracked right down the middle. His reflection stared back, warped and twitching. And behind him, another face. Smiling. Busty screamed and dropped it. The mirror shattered at his feet, slicing a gash into his heel. Blood spilled across the porch. He didn't care. He ran back inside and slammed the door. Then locked it. Then bolted it. Then pushed a chair against it for good measure. That night, he had another dream. This time, he was a child again, barefoot, standing in the living room of the house he grew up in. It was Christmas. The tree was lit. His parents sat on the couch. They didn't look at him. Didn't smile. Didn't speak. Just stared straight ahead, glassy-eyed, frozen. A voice whispered in his ear. Not theirs. Not human. They left you empty. I'll fill you up. He turned, and there it was. A tall figure made of shadows and smoke. Its arms were too long. Its mouth opened sideways, across its entire face. And inside, there were mirrors. Each one held a different version of Busty. Bleeding, crying, screaming, burning. And in the center, one was smiling. That version spoke. You let me in. You made the choice. Now I live here too. Busty woke up screaming, drenched in sweat, blood seeping from under his toenails. His joints were locked stiff. His shoulders felt dislocated. His wrists popped when he tried to move them. And on the wall across the room, someone had written, "Go back to the basement." Part 4, The Descent. Busty didn't leave the house the next day. He sat in the living room, hunched over like a puppet with its strings cut, cigarette dangling from his mouth, ash spilling onto his filthy jeans. His bones felt like they were crumbling inside him. Every movement was pain. His knees throbbed. His shoulders ached like someone had driven nails into the joints and twisted. He wanted to cry. Not just from the pain, but because he didn't know when he'd stopped being himself. He used to be a good kid. Kind. Quiet. He didn't ask for much. All he ever wanted was to be loved. To be seen. Instead, they treated him like a burden. His parents. His brothers. His classmates. Teachers. Like he was too slow. Too soft. Too wrong. He made mistakes, too many. Drank too young. Spent money he didn't have. Pushed people away. He always thought he'd fix it later. Now later was here. And it was too late. He stared at the crack in the wall, the one where the basement door had vanished. It had widened. He could see something inside now. Darkness, yes, but also movement. Like the wall breathed. Like it watched. His body was failing. He knew that. No job. No future. No friends. No help. Every night he thought, tomorrow I'll stop drinking. Tomorrow I'll eat better. Tomorrow I'll leave this place. But the house wasn't letting him go. It wanted him. Needed him. And now it whispered when he slept. That night, he stood in front of the wall. The air was cold, even though it was summer. His breath fogged. The crack looked like a mouth. He touched it. And it opened. Slowly, silently, the drywall split like paper, revealing a stairwell. The same one from before. Only this time, it went deeper. His legs trembled. Pain fired through his calves. He limped forward. He descended, one step at a time, each one harder than the last. His body groaned. His skin felt tight, stretched. His back cracked loudly halfway down. He gasped in pain, then continued. The basement had changed. Gone were the mirrors. Now it was a long, narrow hallway. At the end, a door. Old wood. No knob. Just a symbol scratched into it. He didn't recognize it. But it made his spine itch to look at. Still, something in him wanted to open it. He raised a hand. And the door opened on its own. Inside was a room with only one thing, a hospital bed. And in it, himself. Younger. Maybe 20. Eyes closed. Tubes in his arms. Pale. Unmoving. He stepped closer. The figure on the bed opened its eyes. They were black, bottomless. It smiled. You let everything rot, it said. Even me. Busty stumbled back, breath hitching. I didn't mean to. Too late. The thing sat up. You were the door. You always were. And now I'm coming through. The ceiling cracked. The walls rippled. Hands began pushing through, dozens of them, clawing, scratching, reaching for him. He screamed. Ran. Clawed his way back up the stairs, lungs burning, vision blurring. He burst into the living room and collapsed, shaking, sobbing, skin cold and wet with sweat. The basement door was gone again. But something had followed him out. He could feel it. In his spine. In his skull. Behind his eyes. Something had crawled inside. And it wasn't leaving. Part 5, Hollow Inside. The pain was unbearable now. It wasn't just aching anymore, it was burning. Twisting. Something deeper than muscle or bone. Like something alive was moving underneath his skin. Busty lay curled on the floor, fingernails clawing into the rug. His back arched involuntarily as a spasm ripped through his spine. His teeth chattered, not from cold, but from pressure. From within. Every joint screamed. He could feel something growing. Like roots. Or bones. But not his. He screamed. Punched the floor. Tears poured from his eyes. Stop, he begged. Please, just stop. But the house didn't listen. He dragged himself to the mirror in the hallway. His reflection was wrong again. His face sagged on one side. One of his eyes was turning black, not bruised, but discolored. Like ink was spilling inside it. His teeth, some of them looked longer. Sharper. He touched his cheek. It twitched under his finger. Something moved. That night, he didn't sleep. He couldn't. He sat in the kitchen, chain-smoking, gulping vodka straight from the bottle. The clock above the stove blinked, 3:33 a.m., over and over again, frozen. The whispers had changed. They weren't coming from the walls now. They were inside his head. And they sounded like him. But worse. Colder. Smiling. You can't be fixed. You were always meant for this. You'll never leave this house. By dawn, he started seeing them in the corners. Shadows. Crawling on the ceiling. Staring from inside the cabinets. Faces in the peeling wallpaper, smiling with cracked teeth. He fell asleep against the fridge. And dreamed of his mother. She stood in the doorway of their old house, arms crossed, disappointment in her eyes. You were a mistake, she said. We knew at the moment you started crying. He tried to speak. But his mouth was full of ash. He woke up coughing, blood on his tongue. And on the fridge, written in black finger smudges, let us in. He wanted to change. He wanted to be better. He wanted to clean up, stand tall, start again. But how do you change when something is living inside you? When your bones no longer belong to you? When the voice you hear in your head isn't yours anymore? Busty stared at the cracked wall where the basement used to be. He was done hiding. Done running. He would go back down. One last time. Part 6, Beneath the Skin. The wall was breathing again. Not in a way you could see, not exactly, but Busty could feel it. Like the air around it expanded and collapsed in slow rhythm, like lungs full of mildew. Every breath it took pulled at his own chest, like it was sinking with him. Inviting him back. No, not inviting. Calling. There was no door this time. Just the crack. A long vertical split in the wall, now wide enough for a person to squeeze through. Busty stood in front of it, shirtless, soaked in sweat. His skin was pale and stretched. Veins bulged beneath it, black instead of blue. His joints popped every time he moved. His left hand twitched without his permission. His right eye had gone fully black. He didn't bother covering it anymore. He knew he was changing. Becoming whatever the house wanted. But one small part of him still fought. The part that remembered the kind things. The child who fed stray cats. The boy who stayed up late just to make sure his drunk father didn't choke on his own vomit. The real Busty. I don't want this, he whispered. I want to change. I want to be. Too late, said the voice behind his eyes. He took a deep breath, then stepped into the crack. It was like slipping into a throat. Wet. Warm. Tight. He had to crawl. The walls pulsed around him, soft and cold, like flesh. The pain in his body reached a fever pitch, every nerve screaming, every bone creaking like it might split in two. He bit his lip until it bled just to stay conscious. Then, suddenly, light. A large chamber, deep underground. The walls were covered in mirrors again, but now they showed only one reflection, the smiling Busty. Dressed in clean clothes. Straight posture. Bright eyes. Everything the real Busty was not. This version stepped forward from the mirrors. Not a reflection. A copy. It walked like him. Spoke like him. But cleaner. Sharper. Hollow. Why do you keep fighting? It asked. You ruined everything. You hurt everyone. You failed at life. You're not strong enough to fix this. I didn't mean to be like this, Busty said through clenched teeth. The thing tilted its head. But you chose it. Busty fell to his knees. Every bone in his legs screamed. He couldn't hold his own weight. Tears ran down his face. I want to be better, he whispered. The thing crouched beside him, leaned in close. Then give me the rest of you. And I'll fix everything. Its mouth split open wide. Too wide. A gaping black pit lined with glass teeth, each one reflecting a different version of Busty's worst moments. The lies. The drinking. The screaming. The loneliness. Just say yes. Busty looked into its eyes. And, for the first time, he saw something behind them. A face. His face. Sobbing. Screaming. Trapped. This thing wasn't just wearing his skin. It had stolen part of him. The part that had hope. No, he said. The thing paused. What? No, Busty growled, standing slowly. His legs trembled, but he held firm. I made mistakes. I hurt people. I've been a mess for years. But this thing you are, it's not me. The pain flared again, worse than ever. His bones felt like they were cracking open. But he stayed standing. I want to change. I still want that. The thing screamed. The mirrors shattered. And the entire chamber began to shake. Part 7, The Last Room. The chamber split open. Mirrors cracked and fell like broken wings. The walls heaved inward, screaming, a sound not made of voice or air but memory. Every lie Busty had ever told. Every slurred apology. Every silent cry for help, they echoed through the air like knives. And the thing in front of him, the smiling copy, twisted. Its form melted and elongated, limbs flailing like vines in a storm. The face sagged. Teeth multiplied. Eyes filled with fire and hate. "You don't get to leave," it hissed. "You don't get forgiveness. Not after everything you've done." Busty stood firm. He was shaking. Bleeding. Dying, maybe. But he wasn't afraid anymore. "I don't want forgiveness," he said. "I want to fight for what's left of me." The thing shrieked and lunged. They hit the ground hard, flesh against flesh, bone against bone. Busty screamed as claws ripped across his chest. The creature's mouth opened again, black and endless. It tried to swallow him whole. To reclaim him. To drag him into the dark forever. But something inside Busty, something small and stubborn, burned brighter. Not rage. Not even strength. Just refusal. "I'm not yours," he gasped. "Not anymore." And he bit down, hard, into the thing's shoulder. It howled in pain. Then, the mirrors began to reform around them. But now they showed truth. Not just failure. But moments of resistance. The day Busty gave his last cigarette to a shivering stranger. The time he left food on a doorstep for someone poorer than him. The time he almost drank but didn't. Small, pathetic moments, but real. His. The creature began to shrink. Its limbs withered. Its mouth shrank. Its teeth cracked. It looked up at him now, not as a monster. But as a broken version of himself. "Don't leave me here," it whispered. "Don't forget me." Busty crouched beside it. And for a moment, he almost pitied it. "You were the part of me that gave up," he said. "But I won't live in you anymore." He stood up. And walked away. The hallway closed behind him. The crack in the wall sealed itself. The mirrors faded. And the house fell silent. Days passed. The pain didn't vanish. His bones still ached. His lungs still burned. His hands still trembled. But he started small. Tossed the liquor bottles. Opened the windows. Sat in the sun for the first time in months. He even called someone, a brother he hadn't spoken to in 10 years. The call didn't go well. But it happened. Progress wasn't clean. It wasn't fast. It hurt. But Busty was still himself. And for now, that was enough. On some nights, the floor still creaked on its own. Sometimes he heard knocking beneath the house. But he didn't answer. Not anymore. Because the door had closed. And he wasn't going back.